Hey everybody, welcome to episode 108 of Tuesdays with Perry. Going to get Perry on the line in just a second. Tonight we're going to be talking about Trump's, well, it wasn't a State of the Union, it was an address to the joint session of Congress. So we're going to discuss that. Apparently Perry has 17 points he wants to go over, and we're going to talk a little bit about the speech and about how Democrats reacted, which it looks like Donald Trump trolled the Democrats in Congress. He even brought up a 13-year-old cancer patient, and the Democrats didn't even stand or flinch for that either. So they came across as really disconnected. So let's get Perry on the phone and see if we can't chat with him about this historic, some people calling it historic speech last night.
Hello.
Hey, Perry, welcome to episode 108. It's hard to believe that we've done over 100 episodes. So last night, a historic speech by 47th President Donald Trump, and he talked about a lot of things. He talked about all the things that he promised to do and is doing, which is quite historic in itself. The Democrats had a terrible reaction. It started with Representative Al Green getting tossed from the chamber for continually interrupting Donald Trump, and Mike Johnson eventually called the Sergeant at Arms to have him removed. I haven't seen that before, so that was pretty telling. It just indicated exactly what the Democrats had planned for the rest of the evening, but it seemed to have fallen flat with the American public. What's your take? What's your take on the speech?
Rudy, you're a little broken up.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
only hearing some of what you're saying. Hello? Hello?
How about now? Any better?
Rudy?
Yep, I'm here. Any better?
Rudy?
Hello?
Rudy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, now I hear you. Well, my first 40 minute speech from last night, and in the first 17 minutes President's speech, I had 17 points that I wrote down. Being is, I don't think many people in the lane even mentioned anything. And so I'm just going to go down them really quickly, and then whatever you want to cover, we'll cover. So the first thing was, he came right out of the box and said, pride in the USA is back. And it really is. It really is. Everyone, I can't speak for the other side. I'm not going to try and speak for the other side. They do a good enough job of speaking for themselves. But from the perspective that those of us on the right have is, it couldn't have been more true than how he put it. So yeah, pride is definitely back in the United States, and it has everything to do with a leader who, when campaigning for an office, says, I'm going to do these things if I'm given the opportunity to lead the country. And that's why he started off this way, because he wanted to point out, this is what you voted for me to do, and I'm doing it. So pride is back. Number two, you have a 27-point swing in right versus wrong direction. So you have the people in the country right now, the most recent poll on this issue states that prior to November 5th, the vast majority of the country, better than 70%, if I recall correctly, said on November 5th, the country's going in the wrong direction. There's a 27 points in just 2 months, not even 2 months of this man's second administration. The other thing that was important was he pointed out a 41-point jump in small business optimism. So what drives our economy? It's not Apple. It's not General Motors or General Electric. It's small business. And small business is excited about business again. Very important. Yeah. Very important.
I like the fact that you brought up that stat about people thinking the swing now that the country is going in the right direction or more into the right direction. The ship of state is going to take a while to turn this thing around. But before the election, 75% of the country said the administration is taking or is putting the country in the wrong direction. And now you're saying that almost 30% of that has recovered.
Correct. Very important point. I'm glad he made it.
Yeah, because I thought the Democrats were like cheering that on. Oh, people don't think the country's going in the right direction. Yeah, mostly because of what Joe Biden did. They just didn't want to admit that.
Right. And to get off topic for a second, Trump made the point of talking about the price of eggs. I'm glad he did. And the Democrats laughed about that because they're trying to lay the blame of the high cost of eggs on him. And he pointed out, it wasn't me who made the executive order to slaughter 100 million egg-laying chickens. Right. 100 million egg-laying chickens. Now, as you know, and some of your viewers know, I happen to have a micro farm. We have hens and we have ducks, and they all produce eggs. It takes from the time an egg hatches until that bird can produce its first egg, a minimum of 5 months. So the fact that the cost of eggs is high has nothing to do with Trump, but everything to do with what Uncle Joe did to us. And that's why I'm glad he pointed out. Now, the Democrats could laugh all they want, but even though most people have a short memory, people remember they were complaining about the price of eggs in December. Trump wasn't in office then. The price of eggs jumped precipitously in the last 60 days of the Biden administration. So he's pointing out to people, let's understand this problem with eggs didn't start with me, but I'm fixing it. It takes time. This is a microcosm of what you just said about turning the ship of state from an economic standpoint. It's not going to happen. We discussed this last week. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take months. And this is one example of what it's going to take in order to turn things around. Another point was he went into discussing how he, in his first week in office, had issued 100 executive orders and also issued 100 executive actions. Not the same. Okay? He did that in his first few days in office. The next thing, number 5, first month is the most successful beginning of an administration in the history of our country. Second, as far as comparisons, now he said, I don't put a lot into this because I don't know who came up with this number, but the second presidency within its first 60 days to have such a high rating was George Washington.
Yeah.
Good company to be in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, number 6, within hours of taking the oath of office, the military was deployed to the border in order to help BPS, the Border Patrol, and and the word invasion was used. He discussed it. Who in your life, who in your circle of friends has been saying, since you allowed him on your show 2.5 years ago, who was it that said, this is an invasion? Moi. Now the president is using my terminology. I love it. I love it. So while he was pointing out the comparison with between the Biden and Trump border policy, a female Democrat, I don't know who it was. You couldn't tell by voice. Hopefully somebody on Fox or Newsmax singled her out. I don't know who it was. I still don't know. She could be heard shouting "liar" while Trump listed all the ne'er-do-wells and worse who crossed the border every single day of the Biden administration. Why is that important? Well, he had several families who have lost their children to violent, criminal, illegal aliens who snuck across the border over the previous 4 years. That's why this was so important to point out. All of that happened thanks to Joseph Biden.
Yep.
Very important point. He made that excellently. Number 7, he terminated the green, as he calls it, air quotes, green news scam. And he also walked away once again from the Paris Climate Treaty. This is very, very important for our country's energy independence. Because by walking away from that, we are no longer, as a country, pointing to ourselves in the mirror and saying we are bad people for wanting to use the energy resources that God gave this great land of ours. It was an important point that he made, and I'm glad that he made it. Number 8, he withdrew from the World Health Organization. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah.
Huzzah.
He also added the point that he withdrew us from the UN so-called Human Rights Committee or Council. Thank God for that, because
right.
we know in history how ridiculous and politicized that council is.
Absolutely. And can you believe, I hate to interject, but can you believe that Elon Musk floated the idea this week that we should leave NATO and the UN?
I did hear that. And who else has been saying that? People like you and I.
Right.
I've been saying for 25 years, I want that highly valuable riverfront property given back to the American people. Because the UN sits there, occupies those, I want to say it's 10 acres. I could be wrong. It could be more, but I think it's at least 10 acres. Right on the East River of Manhattan. They don't pay any taxes on that land. But we have to maintain the building.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, when they were doing the major renovations, I think it was at least a decade ago, Trump offered to step in and oversee the renovations so that it could be done in record time and under budget. Did they give it to him? No, of course not.
No.
And of course, it took longer, and it cost hundreds of millions of dollars to accomplish. So that's just a side note.
Side note, yeah.
Number 9.
Keep going, yeah.
Number 9. He ended all Biden environmental restrictions. And best of all, he put a dagger in the EV mandate. Now, why is that so important? A lot of people don't know the evil behind that EV mandate, which says, I want to say by the year 2035, which is only 10 years away, not a single vehicle that is manufactured and driven on the roads of the United States will be manufactured as the internal combustion engine. Not one. Away with it with a stroke of a pen. Hallelujah.
Yeah. Well, the combustion engine is the cheapest form of energy for all people, for poor people, for rich people. It's the cheapest form of energy. If you're going to say, hey, I'm not going to use a combustion engine, then you're at the mercy of the energy companies because you can't generate your own electricity for the most
Well,
part.
not only are you at the mercy of the energy company, position that the Biden administration and before Biden, the Obama administration put the energy producing companies in. Now, I'm not talking about oil companies or gas companies. I'm talking about electrical production companies like Con Edison, or in my case, Florida Light and Power, or my co-op that provides my own property with energy. Those energy producing companies were hamstrung. Why? Well, number one, he forced them to shut down over 100 power producing plants because they didn't meet the strict EPA standards that his administration put forth. And you have solar, wind, that cannot make up the difference, while at the same time, our population is growing and the demand on energy increases before you even get to what consumption EVs are going to demand on the grid. We don't have the ability, as our electrical grid stands right now, we have approximately less than 5% of all vehicles on the roads in this country right now are EVs. Only 5%. Think for a second what 10 years from now it would mean, knowing that we can't use oil, we can't use gas, we can't use coal, we can't build any more nuclear power plants. Think what that's going to mean when it comes to the restricting of available electrical energy to recharge EV. You're not going to be able to. So that's why getting rid of that mandate was vital. So
Absolutely.
Hallelujah to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly was.
Number 10, he outdid himself from 8 years ago. When he came into office 8 years ago, he said, for every new regulation, we are going to eliminate 8 government regulations on business. Now, for every new regulation, we're going to eliminate 10. Another big help. Okay, you want to know why you have so much investment points to these specific bullet points. Number 11, he issued an executive order demanding that all federal employees return to work or be fired. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I don't have to see any more government employees taking pictures of themselves in their bathtubs while they are supposedly working on my dollar anymore. If you don't want to come back to the office, you're fired. Hallelujah. And federal judge supported that.
Right.
So that's being done.
Right.
Okay. Number 12. He ended all government censorship on free speech. You and I don't even have to talk about how vital that is. Okay. When you have people, some of them great minds, people like Dr. McCullough, who were literally banned from having any access to social media to get their word out when it came. And I'm only talking about COVID right now. Okay. This crosses the gamut. People who wanted to have their voice heard with regard to the invasion on the southern border, or how spending $6 trillion that we didn't have to change how our economy works, taking that money out of our hip pockets, that we actually, I shouldn't say our hip pockets, out of the hip pockets of our great grandchildren, to change how our society works. That was done away with. Thank goodness for that. Okay. And that was done so that our voice could once again be heard. You know, the beauty of the First Amendment gives us the right of free speech. It doesn't give us the right to be heard. It gives us the right to speak. If you don't like what I have to say, whether it's on X or Truth or Facebook, or pick whatever social media you want, if you don't like what I'm saying, then don't listen to me.
Right.
That's what free speech is.
Yep.
So thank goodness for that. Number 13. How effective it's going to be, I don't know, but it's about time a president did this. He made English the official language of the USA. Most people aren't aware about this at all. When we were forming our federal government 250 years ago, you know, we came within one vote of having a different language as the language of our country. Do you know what that vote was for? Determining whether or not German was going to be German.
Wow.
Don't ask me why.
Yeah. I would think French.
There weren't enough Dutch in this country at the time for that to be the official language. But one vote determined what language was going to be spoken in this country.
Well, now it's England.
What ended up happening it was a compromise, so there was never an official language. It's about time we had one.
Right.
Because if we're going to continue to allow people to become citizens and not master English, we are going to end up like the Balkans did 4 decades ago, 3 decades
Did you say the Balkans or the Vulcans?
B as in boy.
Okay.
Balkans. Okay. Very, very important. It's one of the few things that I have a pet peeve with my own governor with. You know, I love Ron DeSantis. This is one thing that I don't approve of. He has made it official government of Florida policy to be bilingual. I don't agree with that. Because if any of your viewers ever have the opportunity to go down to Miami, if you go into Little Haiti, or you go into Little Havana, or for that matter, almost anywhere in Southeast Florida, from the southern tip of Miami all the way up to the border with Broward County, which is Fort Lauderdale. If you don't speak Spanish, you can communicate with people who are providing services to you.
Right.
That's the reason why I don't agree with Ron DeSantis on that, but thank goodness the President of the United States is now making it a point that English will be the official language of our country.
Right. And it's also very important because the Hispanic or people of other languages, Hispanic and others, can sue to have either the federal government or the township, municipality, the state.
Rudy, I lost.
Are you there?
I lost you when you said people of other communities.
Yeah, languages.
I didn't hear what you said.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, the languages.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
They can sue the municipalities, states, or the federal government to have things provided in a different language. Now that you have English as the official language, you got to learn English. And that's basically,
right.
We don't need to perform or provide documentation or signage or whatever in a different language, or robocalls. You know, when you call in, it's press number 2 for Espanol. We don't need to have that anymore. Will that continue?
Correct.
I'm sure, because you need to cater to your population. But they can't sue anymore to have that provided.
That's why this is so important.
Yeah.
Number 14, one of my favorites. He ended DEI across the board. Across the board. Thank you, Mr. President. Number 15, he removed CRT and other and gender dysphoria from our public schools. Now, I'm sure a lot of your viewers are aware of what's going on right now between the White House and the state of Maine. It's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out in the courts, because the governor of Maine seems to think she has legal ground to stand on. We'll see where it goes.
Right.
So far, everything's way.
Yeah.
16.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's very important, the fact that some of these cultural items be unwound, because like you said, folks didn't realize how intertwined and infiltrated the whole cultural warfare.
I lost you when you said some of these. You went dead.
No worries. Just continue.
Rudy?
Yep. I'm here.
Rudy, you there?
I'm here.
Rudy?
You sure is it me or is it you?
Rudy?
Is it me or is it you?
Rudy?
Let me know when you can hear me.
Now I can hear you.
Yeah, continue with your list.
Okay. So, number 16, he banned men from women's sports. And I was so glad he had this young woman who was permanently injured while competing in high school women's sports by a male who was pretending to be a female. And I also relished the negative attitude that the Democrats showed this poor young woman. You know, the Democrats have always been the party who has claimed to be the protectors of women. But I guess not this woman. Well, he scolded them for that last night. And hallelujah for that.
Now, this was the high school volleyball player who received a spiked ball, a ball spiked by a biological male, into her face, and it broke her face.
And it left her paralyzed on one side of her body.
Yeah, no, serious brain damage. Yep.
Serious brain damage that is going to be for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
The rest of her life. Where's the justice in that? Okay.
Well, the
number 7.
The continuing refrain is always, why are you bending over backwards for 0.01% of the population and inconveniencing and angering the majority of the public? I don't understand.
Well, not only is it impossible to understand the lack of logic in such an argument, I don't understand how people can be so cruel to individuals who have been injured by such nonsense that should have never happened to them. And from a political standpoint, my attitude is, hey, Democrats, you want to be on the 20% side of this argument, more power to you. I don't mind if you want to do that. You're going to make next year's elections that much easier for us. So go right ahead. The last bullet point that I wrote down was number 17 from the first 17 minutes, and I noted it. I was watching it on YouTube, and I took notice of the fact that it was only minute 17 of the speech. He introduced that same young woman. Her name is Peyton McNabb, to the country. What annoyed me about that moment was, and maybe it was because I was watching it on YouTube, and most people are not aware, but when a speech is given to a joint
session,
thank you, a joint session of Congress, the networks don't have their own cameras in it. The cameras are government cameramen. It's a pool.
Right.
And that is fed back to the networks. And the networks, there's at least three different angles. There's one straight on, which is the one I was seeing. It shows the chair. It shows the speaker. It shows the vice president and the president. That's all it shows. It's right in the center aisle. Then there's usually at least two other angles. It shows the reaction of members of Congress, the members of SCOTUS, the military, and then there's usually one that pans to the individual citizens who have been mentioned by the president during a speech. And I never saw this young woman or her parents who were in the gallery. I never saw the young boy who was deputized yesterday as an honorary member of the Secret Service. And what I found so appalling of the Democrat reaction was that if they were doing it on purpose or not, they were trying to humiliate that poor young man. 13 years old, and my wife said he's had 13 surgeries on his brain since 2017 or 2018. And the reason why he was there was not because he was a prop, as the Democrats and members of the media were saying today. He was there because of Make-A-Wish Foundation. He wants to be a police officer. And when the head of Secret Service, the new head of Secret Service, learned about this, Make-A-Wish obviously came, whether it was to the White House or Secret Service, whichever the Trump administration they went to, they told this member in the administration, we have a young man who is suffering from life-threatening brain cancer, and we have fulfilled his wish. He wants to be a police officer, and he would love to be able to come to Washington. That was why he was there. It wasn't because Trump went and found someone that he could use as a prop.
Right.
So to do that to this poor young man, instead of applauding him for fighting against cancer, and hopefully he's winning the fight now, instead of doing that, they didn't even acknowledge him. That's tragic.
Yeah, definitely.
When you hate Trump that much that you can't support a cancer fighter, someone who hasn't had a chance to live their life yet, are you that sick? Are you that demented? Yeah, people like us, we call them TDS people, Trump derangement syndrome. And they all have it. They all have it. But you can't put your hatred of Trump aside for 30 seconds to acknowledge someone who is there because Make-A-Wish Foundation made it happen for him.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn sad.
It is. It's their subjective world. The only thing they have is hating Trump. That the only position they have is whatever Trump is doing, we're going to do the opposite. So even,
Right.
And I think that's why, and this brings us full circle, why I said at the beginning that Trump is the master troller. He knew they had telegraphed already that the Democrats were going to cause a ruckus, that they weren't going to applaud. And even in the beginning of his speech, he said, there's nothing I can do to make them clap, to make them smile, to make them get off their asses, or to acknowledge me in any way. So he knew that going in. And so whether that had anything to do with his guest list, maybe or maybe not, but he certainly is the master troller, and he trolled them, and they don't even know that they've been trolled, which was the sad the sad state of affairs with the Democrats. So before we close out, I want to give a little bit of time to you to talk about this wild card, which is the Democrats keep saying we're winning battling Trump, and they're doing it in the courts, and there is quite a dust up because the Supreme Court just ruled that a lower court can stay or have an injunction against what Trump is doing until the final ruling. They're not ruling on the ruling itself. They're just ruling on whether a lower court has the right to file or to place an injunction on what Trump is doing. So there's several things that came up around spending and now around firing, et cetera, et cetera. But what people are saying is that it is a travesty of justice that a Democrat circuit judge can delay, deny, defend, to put roadblocks in the way of the chief executive's agenda. People are saying that this is madness. I think these things should go right to the Supreme Court, and they should rule not on whether or not you could have an injunction, but whether or not you could be involved in any way in deterring the president execution of his agenda.
Well, of course, I agree with you, but I also am trying to look at it from the position of the Supreme Court. And even though I disagree with the ruling, I get it. They're trying to protect the independence of the courts, whether you and I agree with their decision on this or not, because today you and I are opposed to such a ruling. Tomorrow we may not be. And that's the thing about the Constitution. You know, all our laws are based on constitutionality. And the court's job is to enforce the law and to interpret and enforce the law. So while you and I and people like us may disagree with the ruling, I do understand why the Roberts Court decided that way. I'm interested as to what the ratio was. Was it 6-3? Was it 5-4? What was it? I don't know.
Well, I believe, I know that Alito gave the dissent, and he put it out pretty plainly, and I agree with his dissent. Amy Coney Barrett sided with Johnson, with the Chief Justice Roberts, and they're the ones that kind of turned it in the direction of the Democrats.
Gotcha. Well, this argument that you and I are on the same page for, if we were to look at it from the standpoint, what if this wasn't the federal government? What if this was Apple.
Right.
And you're telling me that an employee or group of employees or their union representatives should be allowed to dictate to the CEO of a company, especially a Fortune 100 company, how to run his business? And that's the reason why people like you and I don't agree with this ruling, because the bottom line is the president is the CEO of America,
Yeah.
of the United States. And therefore, he determines what direction the country goes over the course of his 4-year term. If you're going to allow people who work for him, he's the president, and people in any department within the executive branch, and that's what you and I are talking about tonight, can say to the president, whether it's Donald Trump, president of the United States, or whether it's Donald Trump, president of the Trump organization, hey, you can't tell me what to do, but I'm your boss. Yeah, so what? I'll do what I want to do. If that's the case, then why is it he was able to demand everybody who works for the federal government return to their office? That's the problem I have with this ruling.
Yeah.
You can't split the baby here. It's either one way or the other.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a problem with that ruling.
Yeah. It's the great thing about it is it's not all that it's chalked up to be, because it is an injunction. It's just a stay. So it's nothing permanent anyway. The New York Times has these headlines that Trump gets blocked, but it's only temporary. So we'll see what the real rulings turn out to be. And I think it's going to
But he's not blocked.
Yeah.
You see, and that's a poor way of phrasing the statement. Blocked means you will go this far and no farther.
Right.
That's not what's happening. An injunction is virtually the same thing as a TRO.
Right.
And the judge is saying, I need time to think about this. And like you said moments ago, this is a liberal judge who's trying to delay the inevitable.
Right.
Because once this goes through the appeals process, and if it ends up at the Supreme Court, it's 95, 99% going to be Trump's way.
Certainly is. It certainly
is. It's just
is
a matter of time.
And it's going his way right now. We're just going to see how it all shakes out with the tariffs and all the executive orders. And
let's talk about those tariffs for a second.
For 1 minute. Go ahead.
Okay. What did the press do in the last 48 hours? They are saying, oh, his threats have failed. You've got China is raising tariffs on us. The Canadians are raising tariffs. The Mexicans are raising tariffs. We're now going to be in a trade war. No, that's not really what's going to happen. What's going to happen, thank goodness, we have the number one consumer market in the world. Everybody wants to sell to America. Well, if you want to sell to America, then you're going to have to play fair. So, two things that the Mexicans do. Number one, they promised us they were going to stop the flow of fentanyl into our country. They haven't done it. That was one of the reasons for his threat, and now he's followed through on that threat to raise tariffs. Number two, if you're going to put a 25% tariff on our product, we're going to match it. That's how it works. He used that same approach with Europe when it comes to selling our cars manufactured in this country to Europe. Europeans actually do want to drive American cars. Well, we have a 2.5% tariff on their cars, but until last week, they had a 10% tariff on our cars.
Yeah.
Well, Trump threatened to raise our tariffs on their vehicles to 10%. Guess how much they are supposedly charging us on tariffs for us exporting our cars to Europe now? 2.5%.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's
That's
just
how it works.
the tariffs are used as to bargain, to get people to the bargaining table. And here they come. They're going to come eventually. Even China. Otherwise, you definitely do want a trade war. But as you said, they don't want a trade war. They want to get into America's markets. All right. Thanks for joining.
Well, they not only want that. You saw what I read the story today. You saw the headline. China said they're ready to go to war with us. Yeah. And I don't mean trade war.
Well, I know, and I've been saying that for a while. China is already at war with us, as is Russia. They know they're at war with us. They just don't want to, to escalate. But we're going to have to escalate and move the confrontation in our terms and to the best of our ability, that Trump can negotiate a fair and a fair deal to move prosperity and peace into the future, where we're obviously the beneficiaries of those negotiations. All right, last word, Perry, before we cut out here.
Well, there's too much more to talk about, so I think the best thing for us to do is to sit back, enjoy what's left, experience of watching him go to town on the Democrats, or as I like to call them, Democrats, last night. And tomorrow's another day. I plan to wake up with a big smile on my face yet again.
All right. Thanks for joining me tonight, Perry, for episode 108 of Tuesdays with Perry. Good to talk to you, my brother.
All right, my friend. You're cutting in and out. I think we're signing off. Have a great night, and I'm looking forward to doing this again next week.
All right.
Rudy.
Talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Take care now.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
All right, there goes Perry, episode 108, Tuesdays with Perry. Thanks for joining us tonight. Join us every Tuesday, usually, for Tuesdays with Perry. Tonight was a Wednesday episode, so thanks for joining us tonight to talk about Trump's historic speech, and the Democrats just can't get it together. All right, join me every day, Monday through Friday, live stream on Rumble for the Rudy's Revelation podcast. Peace out.